so welcome back for a fourth episode on how to build our habit tracker. So in the previous episode, we went into how to build an interface using Swift UI. For this episode, I want to go ahead and clean up a bit our structure and go into a little bit more detail for the Swift objects. So we'll go ahead and create the habit objects, and we'll go ahead and see how we can use that object into our view. So to start, to the structure, I like to create a structure with some files. So I'll just select the file that I want to move into a folder. So we have a new group from selection. It's going to move that one inside a folder directly. And I will just call this app. This is, by the way, just basically whenever you run the app and you launch the app, this is going to be the thing that's going to be called first. And you can see here, it's going to have the welcome view that's going to be used. So this is the launch screen. Following up the welcome view, I will create another group from selection, which is going to be called welcome. And this one, I'm going to create a new group from selection, and I'm going to call it habit list. So we have a bit more structure in here. We'll need another group inside, which is going to be called extension. And inside of extension, I want to create a new file, which it's important, don't go into the Swift UI view, just go with the Swift file instead. And I'll call this the DeveloperPreview. And I will need to create inside the app, actually, I don't care for this one for now, the habit lists. I will need to create a new file again, and I'll keep with the Swift file again. It's not a UI. It's going to be the habit, which is going to be our habit object. And I'm going to create a new file again in the same folder, and it's going to be our habit list view model. Habit list view model. So now we'll start with the habit, which is going to be our object. So we'll create a structure. You'll see that Swift usually doesn't use classes. In most cases, you'll be using structs. It pretty much acts as the same as other places where you would, other languages you would use classes. So we'll just create a object habit, which is going to use the identifiable protocol here. And for the properties of that object, we'll have a title. We'll have, oops, let me just actually use string, description, and the streak, which is going to be an integer. And for that habit, the identifiable protocol will ask us to use an ID. So the ID is usually something that's going to stay the same. So we can just use as constant using let. And we need to call it ID. Technically for the ID, you could put var, but in most cases, you're not going to want to modify the ID, so you should use let, which is going to be more proper. And if you want to add more properties later on, feel free to add some more if you want to add some date created or whatever. But for now, we'll just stick to this. Now for the view model, this is the logic that's going to go with our habit list view here. And basically for our view model, we'll go ahead and implement a struct again. No, actually, sorry for that one. That one is going to be a class. So for the view model, it is, let's see, habit list view model. And it's because we want to make it an observable object. And if you use a struct, you won't be able to have it as an observable. So you'll use a class, And for the class here, you basically want to create a variable that's going to publish to the view the values. So publish var habits, which is going to be our array of habits. And we can init, oh, actually, you know what? Well, I'm skipping too far ahead. So for this, the habit list model view is, view model, sorry. The habit here is going to get published to the list view whenever we're going to implement this view model. Before I go ahead and we should have the habit that is built. In the developer preview, what you want to create here is some mock data. So basically in the developer preview, we will create something very like basically an object that is going to be holding some that's going to be holding mock values. So to start, let's go here and put a comment showing that it's going to be the habits data, mock data. We'll create a static value so we can always reach it without without creating an object every time. Static let habits and call it create an array of habits type that's gonna contain some objects habits that has those values. Okay, that is a lot here. So we have our class developer preview that we're going to use other places. Here, if I don't put the static and I just use the let habit and create variables, every time I use the developer preview somewhere in the code, I would need to call it and create it first. Create an object, and after that I would be able to access this. By using the static, you can just use developer preview dot habits and it's going to give you the values. For the ID, you can go ahead and create just ID1 or ID2. However, there is also a method you can create IDs in Swift, and it's going to generate an ID for that object. So I'm just going to use this instead. I do think it's a bit more proper way to create it. And the title, you can just enter a string. So meditation, for instance. Description, you can write take 10 minutes to breathe. And for the streak, I'll just put it to 0, set it to 0 as a default value. And there you go. You have our first item inside your array. Now you can add a comma and add some more. Let me add some more. You can pause the video if you want to create your own. I just have my own already written. And there you go here. So I have a workout and a social habit that I want to use. So back to our habit list view model. We will want to, once that object class is created, we want to init the values of habit. Oops, my God. Okay, so the init here, we basically want to init the values of our variables that we created. That's going to be published habits, which is going to be equal to developer preview dot habits. So this is going to contain what we just created in our preview. And it's just for now. It's going to change a little bit later. Let me see here. You know what? I think I need to restart this actually. Perfect. So sorry for that. When I changed the structure of the file, I think it just messed up some Xcode wasn't able to just figure out where the file was, so I just had to restart Xcode, and it's all back to normal. So if you have any issues, just restart Xcode. It's going to find the path for your file. Now that we have our new model view, but a view model, what we want to create here, so we want to be able to use that view model to be able to populate information that's going to be changing based on the day or the user in particular. So to do that, we will create a state object. That state object will refer to our habit list view model. So var view model, habit list view model. And we will be able to refer to this item wherever we want in the code to be able to make it call on some items. So for instance here, I will implement a lazy v-stack. This is very similar to our regular v-stack. It just allows you to loop. It's a better items to loop inside if you have multiple items to show. And in the lazy v-stack, what I want to actually do is I want to use a for each loop. And that for each loop is going to look into our view model, and it's going to take the habits value, the array, and we will show each one of those items. I know what's the issue here. So habit in, and let's say I want to create a text so we can see what we're seeing. Title. Oh, sorry, my God. Habit.title. So if we look, we have our stack. It's the same as a v stack. We have our loop here that will grab this array, and each item in the array will be passed as habit, and we can access those properties from our object. And it's going to basically here meditation, workout, social. You can do that dot description or ID or streak. So now, technically, you could go ahead and pass on all of these. However, there's an easier way to make your code a bit cleaner. We'll go ahead and I'll show you a little bit more in the next video about how to clean that and organize that. If you want to pause the video now and try to implement the buttons to look be populated with the data that we had, feel free to go ahead, populate that, and pause the video. Otherwise, I'll just implement one last thing that's going to be useful for our view, which is a scroll view. The scroll view allows us to basically scroll. So if you have a lot of item here, we'll be able to not just go off screen. We'll be able to access them. So that's going to be it for this video. I think we went through a lot where we went through the objects here implementation. I'm realizing that we're actually missing one thing when I was looking at the button, and it's basically the variable for the emoji. And it's going to be a string. And that emoji will be able to personalize the emoji for each button. Otherwise, we have our beginning of the view model, the logic that has been implemented, and the structure that is better with the mock data. And I realized that I have some error here because of our emoji. So I'll go ahead and implement some emoji off screen. I don't think it's something that you need to see. And I'll see you in the next video.